Good day, everyone. So now let's proceed to our next lesson, which is the contextual and contextual analysis of the first voyage around the world by Antonio Pigafetta. So here are the learning objectives. Number 1, to know about the background of the author and his argument and point of view. Number 2, to trace the historical background of the document. Number 3, to discuss the content and the importance of historical information found in the document. And last, to explain the contribution and relevance of the document in understanding the grand narrative of Philippine history. So, before we proceed to the discussion, we prepared 5 items ng true or false for us to know if may knowledge na po ba kayo about this lesson. So, number 1, Ferdinand Magellan's crew completed the first round-the-world trip without their captain, who died during the journey. Is it true po ba or false? Yes po, number 1 is true po. So, number 2, the first mass in the Philippines was held in Masawa. Dimasawa. Is it true po ba or false? Yes po, number 2 po is true. Let's proceed to number 3. At the end of the voyage, Antonio Pigafetta, the author of the book, was on board the Trinidad. This was the only ship that was able to return to Spain. Is this true po ba or false? Yes po, number 3 po is false. So, bakit nga ba naging false? Kasi po, hindi po Trinidad yung board na sinakyan po ni Antonio Pigafetta. Victoria po yun. And Victoria was the only ship that was able to return to Spain po. So, number 4, Magellan and Pigafetta managed to return back to Spain after the expedition. Is this true po ba or false? Yes po, number 4 po is false. Kasi po, patay na po si Magellan doon. Bale, si Pigafetta na lang po at yung ibang crew po ang nakabalik sa Spain. So, number 5, Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan departed from Spain with a crew of 270 men and 3 of the most advanced ships. Is this true po ba or false? Yes po, false po. So, bakit nga ba false? Kasi po, 5 ships po yung ginamit nila Magellan sa paglalakbay. So, yan, let's proceed na po. So, sino nga ba si Antonio Pigafetta? Si Antonio Pigafetta po is the author of the first voyage po around the world. Antonio Pigafetta, also known as Francisco Antonio Pigafetta or Antonio Lombardo. He was a Venetian scholar who was born about 1491 in Vicenza, Republic of Venice, and died there in 1531. He belongs to a wealthy family in his northeast Italian city of Vicenza. He studied geography, cartography, and astronomy. He was an explorer and scholar from Italy who joined the trip at King Charles I of Spain's request. During the voyage, he served as Ferdinand Magellan's assistant. He kept a journal in which he recorded anything that intrigued or appeared strange to him. Under the direction of Juan Sebastian Elcano, he was one of the 18 men that made it to the other end and returned to Spain in 1522. The first voyage around the world. This was written on board one of the 5 ships that were the first to circumnavigate the world during an expedition led by Magellan, and after his death during the voyage by Juan Sebastian Elcano. Pigafetta's journal written during their expedition in 1519 to 1522 became the basis for his 1525 travelogue entitled The First Voyage Around the World. officially published after Pigafetta returned to Italy. Also, it consists of 203 pages. This document is about Magellan's travels. It is a trail of the so-called Magellan route heading to the Spice Islands, attempting to sail around the world and discovering various possible routes. Here, Pigafetta describes the people, countries, goods, and even the languages that were spoken in the journey in the pre-colonial Philippines. Upon arrival in Europe, he presented copies of his account to several high personages, including Pope Clement VII and mother of King Francis I of France. And also, this is one of the most important primary source. And now, let's proceed to the summary that will be discussed by Julia Akain.
So before we discuss the summary, let me just give you an important reminder. Since Magellan and his crew crossed the international date line, there is one day added to the original dates that Antonio Pigafetta wrote in his book for the better perspective of us Filipinos. So on March 17, 1521, originally March 16, 1521, Pigafetta reported that they reached the Isle of Zamar, now Samar, but Magellan decided to land in another uninhabited island for greater security where they could rest for a few days. After 2 days, March 18, 9 men came to them and showed joy and eagerness in seeing them and welcomed them with food, drinks, and gifts. The natives gave them fish, palm, wine, figs, and rice. The natives also willingly showed them different islands and the name of these islands. They went to Humuno Island, or Humanhon, watering place of good signs, where they found the first signs of gold in the island. They named the island with the nearby islands as the archipelago of Saint Lazarus. On March 25, they saw two balangay, a longboat full of people in Mazava or Mazawa. The leader, or King Raya Siyawi, sent his men to the ship of Magellan. The king offered to give Magellan a bar of gold and chest of ginger, but Magellan declined. Instead, Magellan asked for money for the need of his ships. The king responded by giving them the needed provisions and food. In exchange, Magellan gives them of robes in Turkish fashions, red cup, knives, and mirrors. The two men expressed their desire to become brothers. Then Magellan was introduced to the king's brother, who was also king of another island, Raya Kalumba, king of Zuluan and Calagan. Pigafetta described him as the most of all men that he saw, or the most handsome of all men that he saw in this place. On March 31 or April 1, 1521, Magellan ordered the chaplain to preside a mass by the shore. The king sent two dead pigs and attended the mass with the other king. After the mass, Magellan ordered that the cross be brought with nails and crowned in place. Magellan explained that the cross and the crown were the signs of his emperor and that he was ordered to plant it in the places that he would reach, and the cross would be beneficial for their people because once the Spaniards saw this cross, then they would know that they had been in this land and would not cause them troubles, and any person who might be held captives by them would be released. On April 18, originally April 17, April 7, 1521, Magellan and his men reached the port of Cebu, the largest and the richest of the islands, with the help of Raya Calambu. The king of Cebu, Raja Humabon, demanded that they pay tribute as it was customary, but Magellan refused. Magellan said that he was the captain himself and thus would not pay tribute to the other king. Magellan's interpreter explained to the king of Cebu that Magellan's king was the emperor of the great empire and that it would do them better to make friends with them than to forge enmity. The king consulted his council, and the next day, together with the other principal men of Cebu, they met in an open space, and the king offered a bit of his blood, demanded that Magellan do the same. Magellan spoke about peace and God, and people took pleasure in his speech. Magellan asked the people who would succeed the king after his reign, and the people responded that the eldest child of the king, who happened to be a daughter, would be the next in line. People wished to become Christians through their free will and not because they were forced or intimidated. On April 15, 1521, the people gathered with the king and other principal men of the island. Magellan spoke and encouraged the king to be a good Christian by burning all the idols and worship the cross instead. The king of Cebu was baptized as Christian. After 8 days, all the island's inhabitants were already baptized. The mass was conducted by the shore every day. And when the queen, Hara Amihan, came to the mass one day, Magellan gave her an image of the infant Jesus made by Pigafetta himself. On April 27, 1521, Zula, a principal man from the island of Mactan, went to see Magellan and asked him about full of men so that he could fight the chief named Sila Lapu-Lapu or Lapu-Lapu. According to Zula, Lapu-Lapu refused to obey the king and was also preventing him from doing so. Magellan offered 3 boats and went to Mactan himself to fight Lapu-Lapu. They arrived in Mactan in daylight with 49 in numbers, while the islanders of Mactan were estimated to number 1,500. In that battle, Magellan died. The natives perceived that the bodies of the enemies were protected with armors aimed for their legs instead. Magellan was pierced with a poisoned arrow in his right leg. A few of their men charged at the natives and tried to intimidate them by burning an entire village, but this only enraged the natives further. Magellan was specifically targeted because the native knew he was the captain general. The king of Cebu, who was baptized, could have sent help, but Magellan instructed him not to join the battle and stay in the balangay so that he would see how they fought. The king offered the people of Mactan's gifts of any value and amount in exchange of Magellan's body, but the chief refused. They want to keep Magellan's body as a memento of their victory. Henry, Magellan's slave and interpreter, betrayed them and told the king of Cebu that they intended to leave as quickly as possible. The slave allegedly told the king that if he followed his advice, the king would acquire the ships and the goods of Magellan's fleet. The two conspired and betrayed what was left of Magellan's men. The king invited these men to a gathering where he should where he said he would present the jewels that he would send for the King of Spain. 24 men attended while Pigafetta was not able to join because he was nursing his battle wounds. The natives had slain all the men except the interpreter and Juan Serrano, who was already wounded. The fleet departed and abandoned Serrano. They left Cebu and continued the journey and the world. From the original 5 ships set to sail, San Antonio, Concepcion, Victoria, Trinidad, and Santiago, only Victoria returned to Spain. And from the original 237 men, only 18 men survived.
And now, let's proceed to the contribution and relevance of the first voyage around the world. The account is a proof of the richness, governance, and independence in our country in the pre-colonial era. It tells us that our country has a rich past. The account shows that a long time ago, our country was very wealthy, organized, and independent. Next, Christianity, as the largest religion in the world, was propagated in the Philippines by Ferdinand Magellan. It means Magellan brought a new way of believing in God, which is the Christianity, to the Philippines. This became a big part of our culture and beliefs. Next, the faith of the natives before is just about raising hands and clapping, building different images of their idols, until Magellan introduced Christianity to them. It was accepted and practiced by Filipinos and has been a considered part of our culture and beliefs. It means that before, people had different ways of worship, like raising hands and making statues of their gods. But Magellan introduced Christianity, and many Filipinos started believing in it. Next, the account of Pigafetta enriched Philippine historiography because it contains essential details about the conditions of the Visayan Islands in the 16th century. So it is like we are learning from our history. The book by Pigafetta tells us important details about a group of islands called the Visayan Islands. This helps us understand what life was like there a very long time ago. Next slide. Local writers use his book as their historical information about the beginning of Christianity in the Philippines. It means the people who write about our history use Pigafetta's book as a very important source. It helps them know how Christianity started in the Philippines. Next, the document also narrated the status, inferiority of the Filipinos in warfare, manner of dressing, and system of writing. It means the book tells us how people in the past saw Filipinos. It says they were seen as not as advanced in things like fighting, dressing, and writing. Next, it provided a description, location, and distances of the places visited, thereby enhancing cartography knowledge at that time. Means the book gives a lot of details about the places they visited. And this helps us understand maps better back then. And next, he proved to the other explorers and the people today that circumnavigating the world was possible. It means Magellan showed everyone that it was possible to travel all the way around the world. And this was a really big discovery. Next, he proved They discovered a large body of water on the side of the American continent, which they named the Pacific Ocean. So here, they tell us how they discovered the Pacific Ocean, how they found a huge body of water beside the American continent and named it the Pacific Ocean. Last, they found a strait that connected the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans and called it the Strait of Magellan. Here, this part says they also found a waterway that connected two big oceans, the Atlantic and Pacific. They named it the Strait of Magellan, and this was very important discovery too. And that's all for contribution and relevance of first voyage. In this slide, we prepare 10 items to answer for us to ensure that we learned something in this topic. Next slide here, we can see our references. That's all. Thank you for listening.